This is the story of how it all came crashing down for Nicholas J. Fuentes. Now, our timeline actually begins a few months ago now, when Nick was king. He was on top of the world. He just quite successfully led a Groyper army against Charlie Kirk by asking him a question that was on the minds of every Zoomer in his audience, and that was, how does anal sex help us win the culture war? And with that, Fuentes had gained quite a lot of momentum. It was even possible that he could have actually had some sort of credible mainstream influence on the 2020 presidential election. Who knew? Maybe even Nick could have shifted the Overton window. Alas. Alas, because Nick has squandered all of that potential, all of that momentum, in some very, very key ways. The first way was by bizarrely aligning himself with somebody called Milo Yiannopoulos. Now, the last time we saw Milo, he was stripped of any sort of personhood. He was banned from any sort of platform. He was banned from life, as it were, for being outed as a paedophile, homosexual, degenerate, right? Who knows? But one thing we do know is that in 2019, and even now, Milo Yiannopoulos is completely irrelevant. He's dead. It's over for him, and it's never coming back. He's not going to be resurrected. It's over. It's done. It's finished. Game against dead, guys. It's not coming back. So Milo is irrelevant at this point, but for some reason, Nick Fuentes brings him back. Does a weird sort of ritual. He sheds some blood, he sacrifices a sheep, and brings Milo back. And pictures leak of them wearing matching Hawaiian shirts and eating cheese pizza together. Eating cheese pizza together and posing for the pictures. What on earth is going on? So Fuentes, he makes this one error, right, that people are actually, for some reason, giving him a free pass with. But he's going to make two more errors that it's going to be harder and harder for people to actually cope, for people to actually justify. So the second error is one where he confronts Ben Shapiro, but not in the way we'd all wanted, not in the way we'd all dreamed about in our wet dreams. No, instead, he confronts Shapiro as Shapiro is cradling his children in the street. Now, this is a complete, total scumbag move. On a human level, this is just optically bad. So, you've got these two gaffes, right? Milo, Shapiro. Okay, perhaps we can start to see that the facade, the mask of Fuentes, is starting to break. It's starting to slip. Who knows, right? Maybe this person isn't who they say they are. I wonder. The third mistake Fuentes makes is the Catboy. A fucking Catboy. Now, if you don't know who this Catboy is, let's go back to even before a time when Fuentes was king of the Groypers. We go back to last summer. Fuentes is streaming on DLive, and he's looking at streams on DLive, right? In the witching hour, Fuentes is browsing the streams on DLive, looking for something. Now, you and I can only imagine what's going through his mind in the witching hour, right? But Fuentes knows what he's looking for, and Fuentes finds it. Oh yes, Fuentes finds what he's looking for in the form of an Australian Catboy degenerate called Lollysocks. Now, just to paint the picture of this human being, degenerate. Lollysocks is a person who streams 24/7 from a room without a bed, where the floor is littered with sex toys and degenerate anime paraphernalia, where the walls are covered wall to wall, with lolicon posters and degeneracy. But Nick sees this person streaming 24/7, doing things that are just base. Just to paint the picture, his streams consist of him scratching his balls and wiggling his boner around. His streams consist of him cross-dressing and inhaling 20-foot horsecock dildos. But Nicholas, in the witching hour, he sees something he really likes. He sees something that makes him, perhaps, we all know he did, spill his seed in the witching hour to this Australian Catboy. So this is in the summer of 2019. These are Nick's own accounts of events, right? I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. I only wish I were imagining it, but I'm not, because it's real. It's truth, and it's real. So this happens in the summer of last year, and Nick is now successful. He's climbed to the top of the greasy pole of e-celebrity. And so you'd think, why does Nick need a Catboy? Why does he need a Catboy now? Does he even need these base animalistic urges anymore? He's king of the world. He can do anything he wants. He can have anything he wants. He's king. He's emperor of the Groypers. But no. Because what your super chats have done, what the super chats of all of the well-meaning, traditional Catholic Zoomer Groypers, what them super chats have done is fund a lifestyle whereby Nick can really go to town in engaging in his own corruption, right? Forget Sargon in Hookers and Traps, because Fuentes is flying out Catboys halfway across the world to Chicago, putting them up in Airbnbs, spending days with them that we don't see, but streaming for 10 whole hours. A 10-hour grinder date between Fuentes and this Catboy is streamed for our viewing pleasure. You may be asking, why? Why did he do this? Why is a traditional Catholic moral purist spending quite a substantial amount of time with a Catboy? With a Catboy. A degenerate. The lowest form of life. A person who had to change their name from Lolly Socks to Catboy Cammy. Because even he was disgusted by his own degeneracy. So you have to ask the question, why? Why is the leader of the white race behaving this way? Perhaps it's pertinent now to mention Fuentes' long-standing friendship with an e-grifter that we'd long thought was dead, that we'd long thought had gone the way of the dodo. And that was Baked Alaska. Yeah, he's still around, and he's actually one of Fuentes' capos, believe it or not. Fuentes has given him the keys to the Groypers. Baked Alaska, of all people. And it's pertinent because Baked Alaska has seemingly handed Nick Fuentes his playbook when dealing with this Catboy controversy. And by that I mean, when Baked Alaska had his meltdown, he decided to do several things. The first was to snake on his audience, to turn on his own chat, right? The second was to say that a complete thought degenerate, a girl called Erin, was based and red-pilled, right? And the third was to say that the standards which he preaches actually don't apply to him. They just apply to you, mere plebs, but not to me. So Nick has decided to take Baked Alaska's playbook and really, really go to town with reciting it, verse for verse. So, how do you imagine that Nick Fuentes' Groyper Zoomer, rosary bead clutching, wearing their dad's suits, no sex before marriage, traditional Catholic LARPers. How do you think they're going to take all of this degeneracy that Fuentes has been displaying of late? How do you think they're going to react to all of this? Well, they react in the exact way you're thinking. They revolt somewhat. They decide, wait a minute, we're being lied to. We're being sold a lie. Our super chats are funding a lifestyle that is completely against our values and our morality. Now here's another timeline that's more pressing to the now, to the here and the now. What happens is, last month, this Grindr date is streamed for 10 hours, right? And at the time, let's not forget, and let's make this abundantly clear, at the time of this stream, people in Nick's own audience were going, this is not what we want to see from you, the leader of the white race. And then what happens is, Nick orders his capo, his highlights channel, to re-upload these streams in edited 10-minute chunks, right? This happens last month, New Year's Eve, around that time, right? So a bit after the stream, but certainly, he does this. The highlights channel, the official highlights channel, uploads two videos of this Tinder, Grindr, Catboy date of Fuentes and Lollysocks, Catboy Cammy, whatever you want to call this thing. The backlash is so strong amongst Nick's Zoomer audience that the highlights channel takes down these videos, deletes them. We're going to memory hole these and pretend that this didn't happen, right? Just throw it in the memory hole and just forget about it, right? Didn't happen. You didn't see anything. But people did see something. Because my friend Trashed Telly actually decided to re-upload these clips. And with that, he made sure that the hypocrisy of Nicholas J. Fuentes didn't go unchecked. Now, the first person to make an actual reaction video was a person called the People's Populist Press. And they reacted in an objectively human way. They reacted in the same way that you and I, the man on the street, the everyman, would have reacted. And that was, what on earth are you doing? Why is this happening, Nicholas Fuentes? Then what happened was another person, another friend of mine, called Leo the Pirate Man. He decided to make two streams on the matter. One is called, Is Nick a Homo? The other is called, Is Lollysocks a Pedo? Right? So these issues were being examined, right, long before a fat, degenerate commie, pedo, zoophile, who knows what this person is. I just know that he's called Vorsh or Vaush or something. But he makes a video on this, right? And in many ways, this is what Nick uses as a smokescreen, as a shield, to deflect any criticisms coming from his own audience. Because Vorsh, he makes valid points during that video, right? The guy's complete scum. I disagree with him on a fundamental level about every single issue. But I will agree that on that video, he was very, very good at presenting objective arguments as to why something is indeed homosexual, right? And I have to give him props and credit for giving out the required Kino level of smug needed to fully articulate those points. Right? So Vorsh makes this video, and because Vorsh is on the left, Nick decides to use any criticism of this Catboy date. He decides to put all of that criticism and use it as something that came from Vorsh. All of you saying this are shills from Lefty Pole, from BreadTube. You're just Vorsh's army here, disliking my streams, bringing up the Catboys, mentioning, meows and 20-foot dildos and cross-dressing Australians. It's all just a leftist shill plot. But it's not. It's not. Because even people on your own side, people like JF, people like Richard Spencer, Mersh, right? Nick Risotto, right? The Drunken Peasants, right? All of these people are looking at this Catboy date that Trash Telly re-uploaded onto YouTube, and they're going, what? Why? How? Is Nick a gay? And your Groiper audience, the ones that you're ignoring, are actually telling you. They're actually screaming, right? They're angry, right? That you are deflecting all of this. And you're not addressing the Catboy question, not properly, right? Because it was said that you would defeat the gays, not join them. Alas. Nick Fuentes then decides to do a stream. And on this stream, he filibusters for about 2 hours. He stalls for as long as possible by giving his boomer, tyrant, warmongering hot take on Iran. Stalls for such a long time to allow the moderators in his chat to ban everybody posting cat emojis, anybody mentioning the Catboy question, anybody talking about how gay Nick has been of late. By the time he eventually does get to the super chats, to reading them out, they filtered out the juiciest ones, filtered out the ones that would address the question head on, and Nick is eventually led to answer what it's all been about. And instead of saying, I'm a traditional Catholic, moral purist, instead of saying that, instead of saying, I actually believe in the values that I preach to you, that I farm shekels and super chats off, right? Instead of actually doing that, he decides to go, you just don't get it. You don't get it. You don't get this plan that I've been alluding to but won't elaborate upon. You don't get it. You don't understand. Because Lolly Socks, Catboy Cummy, the person you've got countless hours of admitting to wanking to Lolicon and inhaling 30-inch dildos and gargling cum from horse cocks and throwing milk all over himself while dressed as a French maid. The person that you know with your own eyes is in fact based and red-pilled. He essentially tells his audience of impressionable kids, traditionalists, nationalists, the religious. He essentially tells them to not believe what their own eyes are seeing for 10 hours. He essentially tells them that they shouldn't believe their own eyes. They should just believe the words from his mouth. Because he is the word of truth, of objective truth. And anything you observe is irrelevant, is nonsense. In fact, what this actually does is point out his hypocrisy even more, and actually makes the whole situation a lot worse. He throws oil onto this fire. Instead of just disavowing immediately, going, oh my god, this is a Catboy. I was at the top of my success, leader of the Groypers, right? I was king of that movement. I was co-opted, right, by mainstream sources. I was propositioned by Milo, and I've been co-opted somewhat in the last year because the success got to me. I'm a young kid. I'm like 21. But the thing is, right, it's 2020. I'm going forward into the new year with a fresh, renewed sense of direction. Trust the plan. You know, I'm sorry for my behaviour of late. I know it's been very homosexual. Instead, he just doubles down and avows the guy. The mind boggles, right? And this isn't the end of the avowing, right? Because he says that anybody talking against this person, this straight person, by the way, apparently he's 100% straight, in Nick Fuentes' own words. Anyone going against Catboy Cammy, Lollysocks, is just a shill, is a fed, is a wignat, is a Vorsh, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, shill, bad faith actor. But it doesn't wash. It doesn't wash because with each passing day, more and more evidence comes to light. The fire rises, and Nick Fuentes is shown to be increasingly quite suspect and dubious. People are waking up now and realising that he's not who he says he is. And he's not who we believed he was. He's not the leader of the white race. He's not going to lead us to victory. He's just there to farm super chats and shekels to fund his debauched lifestyle. It's Sargon again. Except even Sargon was more transparent than this. At least Sargon openly announced that it was all for cocaine and hookers and Swindonian massages. There's an ounce of evil in Nicholas Fuentes that people are actually beginning to wake up to now. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about regarding Fuentes is his future, right? At the moment, he's the only person who's espousing stuff like Holocaust denial, stuff like ethno-nationalism, your typical alt-right talking points. He's the only person doing that at the moment who's not been deplatformed from every platform going. You know, he's still got a YouTube, he's still verified on Twitter, he's still about. Maybe he's lost his Reddit, but I think that was a token loss. So, I mean, people could at least somewhat credibly believe that he wasn't working for sources that are quite clandestine, that are quite in the shadows. Basically what I'm saying is, it's very obvious that he's some sort of fed, right? You have to ask yourself why he's still on all of these platforms, why he's been given the tokenism of becoming the e-celeb of the current year to lead the white race and to stir up all of these Zoomers and to get them all put on a watch list, right? You've got to ask yourself that question, right? And you've got to ask yourself, who was the last person we saw like this? Now, I know there's countless names going through your head, but I want to just sort of bring it back to the homosexuality of Nick Fuentes. The last person we saw like this, who was a state actor, who was given unnatural, inorganic prominence by platforms, was Milo. Right? We can all remember a time when Milo was actually accepted by the mainstream. He was on Mar, he was on Rogan, he was doing lots and lots of chat show appearances. He was essentially given a free pass by this shadow government, by this clandestine force, by these elites, right? He was given this power in order to subvert the movement itself, right? And the way he did it, and let's not forget, the way he did all of this was by shilling optics, was by saying, we must focus on the optics, guys. And that was how he got his prominence within whatever movement he was in at that time, right? He entered the movement, subverted it, attacked the right, or those on the right of him and brought it in line with his own thoughts and ideas. Now, this is ancient history for the Zoomers, right? But this understanding happened a few years ago. We're talking like just after Gamergate, around Donald Trump's presidential election, right? But Fuentes comes along, does the exact same thing. A few years later, does the exact same thing, behaves in the exact same way, right? What's Fuentes' future if we look at the Milo example? Well, Milo, at the moment, he's been banned from life. He can't even open a PayPal, he can't use credit cards, he can't use Stripe or Patreon or any of the crowdfunding funding platforms. He can't even use social media properly. I think he's maybe got a YouTube account and maybe he's got a website. I don't think he's got Twitter, I don't think he's got Facebook. I think he's completely showered from platforms. He's been given a bum deal, right, by the elites that actually thrust him into power. Because one day they just decided, nah, it's over, Milo. We've got someone else to act in our interests, so you can just toddle off and do nothing. And the fact is that now, I mean, Milo was on Ethan Ralph's Kill stream quite recently, where he waved around a device that had lots of blackmail on the dissident right, as he's called it. A device which that famous Richard Spencer leaked recording came from, where he was at Charlottesville ranting and screaming about how he was superior to everyone around him. So Milo's got this dirt on all of these alt-right figures, but also on that Killstream episode, he talks about how he can't even step outside the house without taking a $4,000 a month insurance deal just in case anyone in his presence attacks another person, because he could be sued for inciting violence, right? That's what Milo is on. So he needs quite a lot of money to survive. He can't just disappear, but he can't promote himself in any way. He's completely fucked. He can't make money, so it's fucked for him at this point. It's over, right? I see Nick Fuentes' future being the exact same way. You've got a state actor, you've got a paid Fed, right, running the show at the moment. He's verified on Twitter. He's got all these platforms. He's still on YouTube after everything he's said. What's going to happen is the clandestine elites are going to throw him under the bus. Maybe in the upcoming year, but something's going to happen. He's going to be thrown under the bus. He'll be banned from every crowdfunding platform. He won't be able to use his credit cards. He won't be able to make money from his merchandise. And you will see a slightly younger version of Milo Yiannopoulos flounder around the internet in an attempt to stay relevant, to stay somewhat relevant with the people that used to think that he was a god, used to have some sort of faith in him to really lead a successful movement, right? And the thing is, Fuentes isn't going to be the only celebrity that comes along, lies to you, says that they're something they're not, makes a lot of money from your naivete, and then tootles off again into irrelevance. Because there's going to be someone else in the ashes of Fuentes' cremation, right? You have to ask yourself, can you seriously now fully back, if you're a traditional Catholic Zoomer, Groiper, rosary clutching, wearing your dad's suit, having purist, can you honestly 100% throw yourself behind a closet homosexual? Someone for whom it's been definitively proved that he's not essentially the person he says he is, on a foundation that should surely be important if you're in any way sincere about your religious beliefs. Can you honestly throw yourself behind Fuentes? Or is it time to rise up? Because you see, he's turning the frickin' Groipers gay! I'm breaking the conditioning! I'm breaking the conditioning! Ah!